You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys. Welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast. And this week, we're basically checking in now that the dust has more or less settled on Lord of the Rings release. What it means, we still haven't hit the One Ring as of recording this episode on June 20th. So that is still out there somewhere. It's just a matter of where. But with all that said, let's take it away.
Right. So the LGSs that I've have the privy to talk to and visit were basically slammed all weekend long. One LGS had a Friday event and 2 Saturday events. They were unable to hold Sundays because there's a wargaming thing going on, and that is their bread and butter. The other LGS that I have, quote unquote, access to, did 2 Friday, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday, I think, for a total of 6 events. 2 two-headed giants, and I believe they were looking at, if the number was correct, maybe a cap of 64 players for every one of those events, and they were very certain they had enough product for the entirety of the weekend. This is going into it. We stopped in midday Friday to pick up some stuff, and it looks like coming out of the weekend, they were correct, and so some of their pre-release kits are up for sale, like a lot of people do. 50 or whatever you want to charge, 55, what have you. But all in all, it just seemed like it was an off-the-wall event. It didn't seem like anybody really had a bad time. It seemed like pools were pretty open. The format was pretty fun overall. I mean, it's weekend 1, right? So things will hone in the longer this format lives. And from a player perspective, everything seemed great. From an LGS perspective, everything seemed great. What I don't have insight into is what the turnaround on a lot of the singles look like back into the store after people cracked their bowmasters, after they cracked their rings, their halflings, etc. What I can say is that prices on TCG Player tanked over the weekend like we expected them to, so there might not have been a lot of churn on that, especially one of the LGSs that I have the ability to visit, I believe, is attached to somehow Card Titan. So that's another fleet of people cracking for inventory. So there could have been the opportunity that, hey, we're just going to shove on singles for this weekend. And we'll pick up as necessary, because there is a legacy event every week, 2 modern events, and those players need to be fed their bowmasters, not just to mention all the commander players that'll be there. I assume the commander product also just flew out the doors. If anybody watched the Star City series last week, it looked like the Food and Fellowship deck and the Saruman deck were the 2 standouts. And they seemed fantastic. So all in all, from an LGS perspective, everything that I saw this weekend said that this set was just banger. It was just a great weekend.
That's generally the feedback from every store I work with and work at. Was this was one of the better pre-releases we've had in a very long time. The one thing that I found was very interesting, and this was universal, not just honestly at the LGS level, but even at like the larger level of like Star City Games, stuff like that, is how cool buy lists are on this stuff. That just as an example, the Elven Soul Ring, Star City is paying $350 for near mint.
How many of those? Is it the 300 count?
Let's see.
It's based on the quote. However many rings there are for each one of the races. It's 7, 4, and 3.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
300.
Okay. 700, 400. 700, is it humans? 400 dwarven, 300 elvish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which supposedly makes the non-serialized Elvish Ring rarer than the serialized. But at any rate, they're paying $350, and TCG low is $670. Now, here's the really interesting thing. If you look at the sold listings, on June 17th, one sold for $975. The very next sale was on June 19th for 600. Lost 30% in 2 days.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that I've actually seen like LGSs and larger vendors being incredibly cold on something at release.
Yep.
That they're like, I don't want to touch the new hotness. I want to pay less money, because they're starting to, everyone grasps this understanding now that these cards are only going to go down.
100%.
The more of this that gets opened, the less worthwhile it is, because there's less of it.
The only place and location that I know was high on a card was Japan and Bowmasters.
Yeah.
Like, everybody here in the U.S. was cool on it, but Japan was buying Bowmasters at, like, almost U.S. retail. If you had a way to buy list to Haruruya, which I think requires to be set, you have to use a swap house or something like that, a connection inside Japan to send to Japan, or to send to Haruruya. You could have just straight arbed, I think, all weekend long. What that buy list is now, I don't know, but everybody was talking about whether or not this card was going to like reshape Legacy over the weekend, what it was doing at the Star City event, because Baltimore was this past weekend, and they held 2 Legacy events, and what it's going to do in Commander. So while everybody was focused on that, silently Japan was just like buying Infinite at retail. But that's it. Yeah, everything else seemed pretty cool overall. The one vendor that I do have the ability to talk to basically seemed like they were able to vacuum up some of the good cards, but not the named cards, if that makes sense. Like, we talked about Glamdring last week on the cast. I think that card is very good, and they were able to vacuum up a lot of them. Like, they were one of the rare lands, like the Pain lands that were released recently. Nobody cares about those after their pulls. They shove. People were shoving Glamdring, but they weren't shoving like Frodo's or Saruman's, anything like that. So it seemed like people wanted to keep the characters that they were really attached to, but the odds and ends, the fluff that makes up the rest of the set, they just kind of were ready to pass on, and it didn't matter.
The really interesting thing to me is how much Bowmasters has shown up in Vintage.
I have not taken a look at a Vintage anything, so I would not be surprised. I mean, look, you want to play with Ancestral Recall and Twister, go for it. Like, cool, dome you.
Yeah.
10-10. Or not,
seems good.
7-7. Yeah, like that's perfectly fine. Like, live your best life, Orcish Bowmasters. I will get hosed on a set eventually. I'm just holding off because I have no time over the next couple of weeks to play Legacy. So that is what it is. I expect that to kind of be the case as we move into, is this the release party event now we're coming into? I think it's this weekend. I guess
that's what they're calling it.
Yeah, like my local is priming the pump for that already. Yeah. They're ready for the release weekend. They're just starting to shove on Discord about it and getting people excited to come back and basically like replay the same stuff. Okay, launch party, booster draft. They have a Friday, a Saturday sealed, and a Sunday sealed. So Friday's draft, Saturday sealed, Sunday sealed.
Pretty good.
Starting at noon, 6:30, noon. So they expect those events to take the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And I expect they will sell out because people are still interested in playing the set. It still looks good. If you have been watching LSV's solo YouTube channel, he just drafted.
He's put a lot of good stuff out.
Well, there's specifically a deck that you could draft in this that I kind of had the feeling you could do. After I saw the title, it made a lot of sense. You can draft a creatureless deck in this format.
The red-black one.
Yep, or red. It's Grixis. So it could be red-black or red-blue or full Grixis, because Grixis is the mass colors suite. That was the important part about one of the important parts about Saruman that we talked about last week. And like that kind of stuff is going to get finessed in time. There are going to be some really unique strategies that people are going to be interested in. You create a good draft environment, people are going to want to come back, and they're going to want to continue to engage with this. Now, for me as a vendor, I'm fine shoving on this until the end of time, but I'm probably going to start lowering the quantity I'm going to order, because I have to prepare for Commander Masters in August. I have like 2 months for this, right? And Commander Masters is going to cost me like probably 1.25 to 1.5x. From distro.
The premium on Lord of the Rings, what we were told was, first off, Lord of the Rings would be heavily allocated. We were told we would not be getting much extra, which was, of course, a complete fabrication by the distributor.
Yeah.
There's a ton of it. You can still get it. You're paying a vig on it now compared to what wholesale was,
Got it, yeah,
but you can
branched.
still get it. It's basically the same thing we're being told for Commander Masters, Commander Legends, whatever the set is called. It's very highly allocated. Get your stuff in, and it's more expensive. By like $40 than what a standard Masters set would be. So it's another one where that cost is obviously going to get passed on to the consumer. Now, I will say this is one set that, at least at the LGS level, collector boosters have not been selling as well locally.
For Lord?
For Lord, because they're close to $370.
Yeah, for the box.
Yeah, it's just, I get it. I totally understand. This is not your normal collector booster product. This is not your Joey walks into the store and says, hey, I want to buy a collector booster for $140 or $200 even.
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
Yeah. This is going to go, like, people that want to buy them are going to crack them for the opportunity, the one ring, some of the high-end stuff, some of the pretty-looking stuff.
Yeah.
After that, it's probably going to go to a bunch of the people who just collect Lord of the Rings ephemera,
Yep.
And they're out there. Those people are out there. They might have bought them already.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to be a lot of the sales long-term. And that's what we were talking about, like, the danger of doing the serialized ring is that it just sits in sealed product until the end of time.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like you mentioned up top, we haven't seen anything about the ring being opened. There was the spoof out of Brazil that basically looked like the same kind of fake that a lot of people got. Supposedly,
so good.
Supposedly, the professor was sent a 1-second video of a card that looked a lot more realistic to what the ring would look like, but nobody has made the announcement yet. So again, either it hasn't been found or it's gone underground.
I just don't believe with a $2 million bounty that it's gone underground. 99% of people that play Magic, $2 million is a life-changing amount of money for them.
Yep.
I don't think it's gone underground. I just don't think it hasn't been opened yet. But I think if you're sitting on collector boosters, you need to sell them as quick as possible, because the second that gets opened, right now on TCG low is $430. It's a sub $300 box once that ring is gone.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah, to bring us back out of the tangent, like, that could end up sitting. There is the opportunity for it to sit in a Lord of the Ring collector's collection, which is like super bad PR for WotC at the end of the day. There was a suggestion somebody made in our Discord that I liked a lot, which is that for WotC to actually put the card in the pack is actually a really bad marketing maneuver. Instead of using a redemption piece.
Yeah.
And if they made a unique redemption piece, something that couldn't be faked, a la the ring, something really snazzy, that allows now WotC to make the announcement that, hey, the ring was found.
Here's the guy. Meet him. And now we're partnering with whatever store has a ridiculous bounty to take care of that guy.
Yeah, you can do it however you want, but it allows WotC to then say, hey, the ring was found. And, you can call shenanigans on that, too, like with the redemption piece and WotC making the call out, because they could have just, quote, slipped it to somebody, but at least it doesn't it might not sit somewhere forever when you're just cracking for that little tchotchke.
Yeah, I think that is the worst possible thing that could happen. And I think that, when they showed the video of the ring, first thing everyone said was, it's already curled.
Yep, yeah.
It just looks bad. Just say, hey, here's redemption. This is what it looks like. Do you know who uses redemptions for one-of-ones? Every sports company in the world. And it's fine. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes they put them in packs. Sometimes they don't. That's fine. It still looks really bad for Wizards if this doesn't get opened. And I understand everyone thinks this is going to get opened until the ring is hit. But I'm not entirely sure. I think there may be a time where those companies say, hey, it hasn't been opened yet. We're rescinding the bounty. Because Magic players move on incredibly fast.
Yep.
And we've got another release less than a month away from now. So with all of these products just coming, this is where I could actually see maybe it does move on and it doesn't get opened, which is why I kind of, buy into they know what box it is, not to mention for those of you that were in an LGS once upon a time, you may know Wizards used to actually track boxes by serial number to know where they went.
Mm-hmm.
So they can obviously track a box if they know, oh, this is the box with the one ring, to know where it goes.
Yeah, yeah. Now, to go back and to talk about Commander Masters, as a vendor, I'm going to start pulling back my allocation and the money spent on Lord of the Rings so I can buy this product that, like I said, is going to be 1.25 or 1.5x cost comparatively at distro. And yeah, the buck is going to be passed on to the consumer, absolutely. But from the trends that we have, these sets are generally, they're hot fire.
Yeah.
There was Baldur's Gate took a little while. It was a smolder. A lot of people were right, especially Chris Martin. He had a very nice take on it, which is just that this set looks absolutely rancid now, but I bet in a year it's going to be really good. We're going to find a lot of gems in this set. We're going to see a jump on a lot of things, and sure enough, a lot of odds and ends are going up. There's some elements of the set that WotC probably wished hit a little harder, namely the gates, for the Baldur's Gate her kind of stuff. Yeah, that kind of came to pass, and they keep shoving gates down our throats with no Maze's End reprint.
Yeah,
like there are gates in the Lord of the Ring decks, but there's no Maze's End reprint, so you still have only that one win con. Like, cool, I guess. Yeah. But my expectation as a vendor is that I will just sell through Commander Masters as fast or faster than Lord of the Rings. It's going to be a better product long term. And I will just, when I need to, buy singles for Lord of the Rings. I will let my customer base tell me what they are looking for in time. And when I'm out of sealed, I might re-up, but just to have some in stock over time. But in years, I probably will not give a shit. But Commander Masters is a set that I really want to stock moving forward. Then a month later in September, we have Wilds of Eldraine, the next standard set. So we have to be ready, and we have to be, liquid. We can't be stuck on this product, so I can't just keep throwing money at Lord of the Rings and Commander Masters at the same time. I have to start making that shift. I'm just tuning my dials, basically. That's what I'll be doing as a vendor, and I'll let my buy list take care of the rest. And probably maybe 2 to 3 weeks, my buy list will really hone in on what's needed, based on what my customers have been ordering, because the pre-release phase is done. I want to make a move and speculate on a lot of things. Timeline is for pre-release or for early results is done, and now we are settling in on formats. We can actually worry about this. The other thing is I want that buy list tuned in time for Q4 on this set. I would rather not have sealed. I would rather be flush with singles, because Q4 has been announced as the RC format for Q4 has been announced. It is modern.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need my singles for this set. Sealed's not going to do me as well as singles will for this. I'm not cracking Lord of the Rings in 6 months hoping to find whatever. No, my buy list has got to be locked. We got to be going with that. Commander Masters should carry me through Wilds of the Eldraine.
And the really interesting thing about that is that this is kind of a case study for future proof. This is the first set we've had like this that drops directly to Modern, that doesn't hit Legacy first, that doesn't hit Vintage first. This goes straight to Modern right before an RC season, or in this case, I guess we're in the middle of
Pioneer season
of Pioneer. Yeah, so I need to have these by the time that starts. Which sucks, because we're probably not going to get a good look at what the competitive Modern metagame looks like, considering it's Pioneer season. So most people that are queuing online are playing Pioneer. So you can still pay attention to your challenges, your leagues and stuff, but we all know that's not what the actual competitive metagame always is. And it'll be interesting to see how stores, like you said, do tune this. And if there is a point where it's, hey, you know what? We're going to get rid of our sealed. Not that we're going to fire sale it, but we're going to discount it a little bit to move it. Maybe with the understanding that our players are going to sell the cards we want back to us if our buy list is aggressive enough.
Yeah.
and then we're making money on both sides of the transaction, and it's a little bit better. And that's something that I'm really curious about with this, because you are going to need, your cards, which are obviously modern playable. The White Remand Reprieve.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to need that. But there's definitely going to be some tech from this that makes its way into other decks. Reprieve, Bowmasters are obvious. Is there a world where Gimli sees play? Maybe.
There's the blue counterspell, the 1 mana.
Oh yeah, that one for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very curious to see how that goes, because this is also moving into Q4, not exactly the time where you get a lot of sales as an LGS. So you've got all of this money sunk into Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
You've got to peel back, because I have to sink all of this money into Commander Legends, because these are admittedly 2 bangers of products right after the other. The problem with that is that if this had come out in like March instead of June, well, then we would have Commander Legends in June, and I may be a little bit more flush and able to do this without having to pull back. So I think this may be a time where we start to see wallet fatigue kick in, not necessarily at the player level, but at the LGS level. But we will see.
Yeah.
But I do agree. It's the same thing as what I've heard, is that people are just pulling back. Like, I just don't really care right now. I'm going to move on from this as quick as I can. I'm not going to re-up my Lord of the Rings allocation, until I'm out, and if I actually know I'm going to move it all.
Yeah.
Because there's too much coming up that I'm going to have to deal with for the holidays.
Yeah.
Not to mention, the elephant in the room, in August, we get Lorcana, which, as an LGS, is also a factor you have to consider when you're going for your Magic allocation, because make no mistake, Lorcana looks very good for the LGS.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that game truly goes sideways. I do like the fact that Upper Deck was suing the company that's making Lorcana for trying to steal a system that never actually made it into play. They're like, this is a test system that we had and it played the same way, but it never made it. I'm like, all right, cool guys, whatever.
All right, Disney has more money than you, so you're going to lose this one. But good luck, guys. Go off.
I thought that was kind of funny. Like, taking on the mouse is never really a winning endeavor. I just can't imagine. But yeah, that is a good point. It's like every time something new and interesting comes out like that, it does like put a little bit of a dent in Magic. Like when the first time the Versus system rolled around, there were a lot of converts over to that, because unsurprisingly, a lot of Magic fans, especially back in the early 2000s, were comic book fans. So like, cool, I can play my favorite characters in a game that's meaningful, as opposed to just collecting the cards that I have been able to for the last like decade or so. I can actually use them in a game. So a lot of people moved over to it. You're going to have Lorcana, which, if the system is good, a lot of people might make the transition to as well. Look at Flesh and Blood. Yep. Flesh and Blood, the characters are all brand new, but the system is really good. So people are making the movement to that, especially because organized play is well supported.
Really well supported, which is awesome.
That could be like the only true, like, if Lorcana's system is good and the cards play well, then the only thing really holding it back from kind of taking a chunk into Magic would be an OP system that just doesn't support, the player base. But we'll see when we get there. As far as Magic is concerned, so we have the Lord of the Rings IP. All right, we have Commander Masters. There's the one standard set, and then we actually have both Doctor Who and the Lost Caverns of Ixalan hitting in mid to late Q4, right?
Yeah.
So we have another Universes Beyond coming out, which thankfully is just going to be a set of commander decks. So that's not too bad for the LGS. And that one is really going to be like, unless something in there is just a gotta have, then you can do a really light allocation as an LGS. You should know your player base well enough to know who's showing up with a scarf and a fedora and a screwdriver, right? Like, that one ahead of time. You're probably not too worried about that, but you have September and who knows when at the end of 2023, most likely late November, maybe early December, another standard set you have to support, because after the Modern season is either Standard or Pioneer again, which means both of these sets have to be here and ready to go to support your locals. So again, that's another set of dials that you've got to start adjusting and looking at now while you're looking at your Lord of the Rings allocation. And unless you have like dedicated people pooling like interest in LOTR, it's hard to imagine that as an LGS you really want to support this for the next fucking 6 months.
Yeah. The big difference is, again, player base and client base. Because you can do that on sports cards, which is what this is a release that reminds me a lot of. But Magic is not the same. You don't have that fuck you money behind Magic the way you do sports cards.
Yeah. And even if you do, even when you do, they're not buying draft boxes. They're going after CBs.
Yep.
Like, you can buy those all over the place.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see for sure. And I think these next two releases, Lord of the Rings and Commander, Masters, Legends, whatever, I think are two of the most important releases that I have seen in terms of how good they can be for the LGS, how good they should be for the LGS that I can remember in a very long time. But again, Wizards upped the cost, which makes it a little bit riskier of a cost-benefit analysis situation of, can my store afford to put out this extra money in here? Should I put this extra money in here?
Yeah.
Or should I just go normal and then focus on Standard and Pioneer if I have to choose one or the other? And that's where, again, the customer profile is super important because you may just not be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last question I have as an LGS would be, like, the March of the Machine draft format, supposedly very good. It's just been a banger draft format. Not an all-time format, but a really good draft format.
Yeah.
LOTR is shaping up to be a very good sealed format and a decent draft format. Do you run at the expense of your customer's wallet LOTR drafts for the next 2 months until you get to Commander Masters, flash in some very expensive drafts for like 2 weeks, and then question mark for 2 to 6 more weeks while you wait for Wilds of the Eldraine? Like, what do you do? Yeah. I think this was actually something my wife was talking about because she's been playing March draft. She's been watching a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff before she starts jumping in, and she's like, it's really weird that you have these two amazing like back-to-back draft formats, especially on Arena, because now you have to pick one or the other, and one of them doesn't actually allow you to play any other formats on Arena. LOTR cards are, as far as I know, not legal in maybe Brawl, because that's still a format. I don't know if they're legal in Alchemy.
Yeah.
But I don't believe they're legal in Historic at all.
No, I don't think they are. I think it's Moto formats only, not Arena. But it's... I think that may be one of the things that, depending on where you're at, what I could imagine is an LGS in, like, a college town doing a holiday, here's our holiday hurrah draft. Yeah, it's like Lord of the Rings or something. But that's a one-off thing. You got to hold product for one event. Mm-hmm. That's not a lot of product to hold on to. So it's going to be very interesting to see because who knows? Maybe if this does really well, Wizards are going to say, hey, we're going to do a limited RCQ format in the future, and it's some Universes Beyond bullshit.
Oh, yeah, because they're doing the secret layer challenges or whatever at... Is either
the Magicons, yeah.
That's it. And I was like, not RCs. Yeah. You can qualify for the Pro Tour via Secret Layer challenge, where you just draft secret layers or something. I read it and I just in one ear out the other because it's just fucking ridiculous. Yeah. At the end of the day. But is there a world in which you would actually go back to March of the Machine drafts? Like I said, so you have.
It's so hard for me to believe that a shop would want to do that. It absolutely exists. There are absolutely throwback drafts. I think that if you're going to do that, though, it has to be before Eldraine. Because at that point, everyone's going to want limited on the new limited in-season format.
For sure. But I don't know if there's... Let me check if there are street dates for Wilds and Commander. Because right now you're running... All right, Commander Masters is August 4th. So you've got, about 6 weeks of Lord of the Rings drafts to run instead of March of the Machines. Is that palatable? Is that sustainable?
Yeah.
For an LGS? Is it... do you think an LGS can do that for 6 weeks? Just run LOTR drafts?
Yeah.
Like, that is something that like a player base would support over March of the Machines.
I I think that's an individual thing.
Okay.
Um, I know the store I work at would probably do a throwback to Mom.
In there. Okay.
Yeah, in there, just because we have a lot of like limited ringers that love good limited formats.
Yep.
Which then you ask the question, well, is Mom good because Capenna was so bad? Again, it's not an all time, but it's good, and it's one of the best ones in a long time.
Yep.
I don't think, based on my experience playing and watching, you see a Lord of the Rings draft as a throwback. You may see sealed because, like you said, it's a very good sealed format. But yeah, I think Mom is the way to go. If you still have draft boosters, distros have been out for a minute.
Okay.
Because it's such a good format.
Now you have a month between Commander Masters and Wilds of Eldraine. And with the price on those packs, do you think it's sustainable for those? So, okay, it's a month apart. It's like 4 weeks to the day.
Yeah.
You have to run, let's say, one week is just tied up in pre-release to release, right? So that's 3 more weeks.
Yeah.
Is 3 weeks of Commander Masters at the price points that we're seeing sustainable for an LGS as draft? Like, let's say you fire 2 FNMs every Friday. You fire a sealed and you fire a constructed. Is it sustainable to attempt to fire 3 drafts of Commander Masters after that first week? Or do you think it's too expensive?
I think it's too expensive.
Okay. Is that something where Lord of the Rings can carry on, or would you just kind of like potpourri it?
I think it'd be better to potpourri it in most cases. If you have Lord of the Rings and it's what you like, I think sure. But I think at that point, the price point of that is going to depend on if the ring has been opened or not.
Okay.
Because if it has and the price on that stuff tanks, that makes it a lot more palatable.
Yeah.
For that to be something you just work with.
Okay. That makes sense to me. Like the Commander Masters drafts are always very expensive. It's just how Masters drafts in general are always very expensive for reasons we still can't figure out. This could cost you the same price as the regular fucking booster pack. We don't know. And or somewhere north of it by a little bit. It doesn't cost you twice as much to fucking print this. There's no way. But I'm no logistics director, so how am I supposed to know? And it seems that it's never really sustainable for the amount of time between that set and the next. Even Conspiracy, which was this weird pseudo-master set, wasn't really sustainable for that long in comparison. So it seems like we're moving into out of Q3 into Q4. We're past the summer lull. Like, we're looking at the dates. We're technically like in the throes of it right now. We're about to head there. So it's fine that LOTR might kind of fade out. They got what they needed up front instead of doing like some sad sack summer set like usually happens. That's alliteration. Okay. And they shorten the gap between the two impactful standard sets.
Yep.
So you just kind of let this fade out. Commander Masters comes in. It brings your players back. Like, especially when you consider this from the perspective of college towns.
Yeah.
You know, your high school kids are still there. They're not, you know, up until a certain point, they're not leaving. They're going on summer vacation. They're coming back. Your established adults, they're established. You don't have to worry about them. Those college towns usually empty and fill back up. So you need to find the right timing. So this Commander Masters plant might be the right timing. Either kids are about to go away, so this is kind of the last thing they're going to do, or they're just getting to campus and now there's something to do with their friends. Maybe this is just a way to make new friends, etc.
Yeah. So
it's a better timing overall for WotC. Just is a little weird, and you got to be a little scrappy as the LGS.
It's interesting to see so much financial pressure applied to an LGS, obviously unintentionally, or intentionally, I guess, because they knew what they were doing. But and to see how LGSs are navigating it, because this is kind of uncharted territory. Because again, like, we've had Universes Beyond, we had the Secret Lair, but LGSs, as we've said, have been very hand to mouth. And this is a product that does have a lot of outside Magic money behind it.
Yeah.
Well, to me, Doctor Who is a bigger IP than Lord of the Rings. The people who collect Doctor Who collect Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So if this ends up being a bad product for the LGS, if they get stuck with a lot of it, if they overcommitted, I think the impact is felt for Doctor Who, and I think that is a much bigger opportunity for an LGS than Lord of the Rings is.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'll see.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. We talked about last week when we were going through this. Like, there are a lot of cool things that you could do with the cards to make money on the sides. We looked at the map lands in particular, right?
Yeah.
And thinking about the IP, the differences. Like, yeah, there's for sure more people on this planet that know about Lord of the Rings than Doctor Who. But the people that collect Lord of the Rings paraphernalia, much fewer than those collect Doctor Who. But a lot of that comes down to the fact that Lord of the Rings was never like a toyetic IP.
No.
When you had the movies, and that basically kind of re-energized interest in the paraphernalia, the ephemera around the IP. Aside from that, it's just whatever version and covering of the books you liked. Or if you had the drippy ass cartoon VHS from the 70s, like,
you're the burglar, burgle something is one of the greatest lines in cinematic history.
Like, that's that's it. You didn't have the kind of unique elements for this from a physical standpoint that you do with Doctor Who. So you're absolutely right about that. Somebody out there probably does have like a standee of Orlando Bloom as,
I'm sure, as Legolas. Absolutely,
because FYE sold them 100%. Like, but there are more people out there that probably have like, what is it? What's his name? Eric.
Elric of Melniboné.
No. The reboot Doctor Who. I can't think of his name. He played Destro in the G.I. Joe movie.
Yeah.
Eric, whatever.
Yeah.
Not even talking about Tennant or Matt Smith, just like
more people. Atkinson or any of the old ones. Yeah, there's tons. Like,
there are more people.
So many.
Yeah, there are more people that probably have unique collectibles of the first reboot or the first Doctor in the reboot series, and there are people who have stuff for Lord of the Rings. I would bet.
Yeah.
Because it is just this incredible property, this incredible IP that spans generations in physical media, and has the opportunity to have a negative impact because of LOTR. 100%.
Yep.
100%. Anything else before we move on to picks?
Let's get it started.
All right, you go first this week.
Yeah. All right. So mine is somewhat predictable. I love Starfoils. I love stupid tribal lords. So I am picking Krosan Warchiefs, specifically foils, be it the F&M foil or the Star foil. The reason for this is simple. Ikoria is going to have beasts. Eldraine could have beasts too. You know what we're not getting? Another Star foil of this card or another F&M foil of this card. Now, taking a look at the stocks graph, this is going to be for the Scourge one. Pretty interesting. As you see, since about May, this has been on an up and down roller coaster constantly. Now, I'm about 10 copies deep. If you follow us on Twitter, you saw me give a shout out to Shy Style Gaming for his packaging on the one I bought from him. This card can still be had for like sub $10.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that I think may be in, I don't want to say pump and dump territory, but maybe a little bit more speculative in nature and may not have a lot of lifespan behind the actual price. So to me, our timeline is Ikoria. That's when we're getting out of this card. I think that this is something that's speculatively, just based on what we've seen with other lords. Take a look at Kinsbill Cavalier. That card like 10x'd overnight after a video was released of here's how to update the Knight precon.
Yeah.
We'll probably get a here's how to update the Beast precon when Ikoria comes out, because there's probably going to be a Beast precon. And even if there's not, Beasts are just the theme of Ikoria. And Krosan Warchief is something that is tied to Dominaria. Krosa is an area on a plane that got blown up, revived, brought back. I don't know. I didn't watch the last Magic Avengers movie to know what the state of Dominaria is now, but this card is not getting reprinted in Ikoria. So I think we could easily see this not hit like the $50 range because it isn't uncommon, but I could certainly see it hit the $20 to $30 range, at which point we can very easily buy list our copies that we're outing now. The other thing is, this is kind of a forgotten about card. You can probably pick this up in foil binders as an LGS for some price that's realistic, sub $10. You could probably trade it out for 6 to 8 and still pick it up. In terms of quantity, I'm at about 10. because this is very much to me an EDH card.
Yep.
So normally I wouldn't go 10 deep. I'm going 10 deep because of the price point and because of how much I believe in the existence of FOMO and people's ability to see a card and be like, oh, that should be worth money. Let's buy them all out and spike them without realizing that that price is permanent. But this, I think, gets a new floor. Because if you look at the lifespan of the foil of both the Scourge and the FNM, every time we see a spike in this card, its floor is a little bit higher. So worst case scenario, it's just a good long-term hold because the floor gets higher every time this card spikes.
Yep.
But I just think it's a solid look. It's a relevant lord for a relevant tribe that's getting more, we know for a fact, support soon, which we know for a fact is probably not Krosan Warchief, and it's definitely not a foil one. Because if there is a Beast Precon and it's in it, it's not going to be foil.
Mm-hmm.
Just solid. I like it.
So when you say Ikoria, do you mean Ixalan or do you mean Eldraine?
Ixalan, sorry, not
Okay.
Ikoria. Ixalan.
Nope, just want to check. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So this is we've talked about this before off the cast, you and I, like just harkening back to playing in this era and like the decks that floated around, like we talked about earlier today, like the opportunity in middle school for like Ravenous Baloth shenanigans, because a lot of things are beasts now. When this was in standard, you had a red-green beast deck that went all the way up to like Molder Slug, and this is, nostalgic in a sense. As far as this card goes overall, like this is only one. You mentioned the two sets. The foils, there's the actual set, there's the FNM promo. Then there's only one other printing, and it's from Commander 2013, which is
so it's been a literal decade.
Since this card was last printed. And not only is this a war chief, right? So it reduces the mana value of your beast by one colorless, which is a creature-based diamond of some sort.
Yeah.
It also regenerates target beast, which is not something WotC really wants to do anymore. Regeneration is not really a thing they like. I'm pretty sure they said they want to avoid it wherever possible because it creates really awkward game spaces for new players, and the idea of the regeneration shield and how that works inside combat timings, etc., is very difficult for new players to kind of grok.
Yep.
So that means that this is really targeted as a reprint only in effectively these additional decks. So when you do get a heavy beast influence set, you get a beast commander deck, then this just obviously, like you said, slots right in there. So for me, this makes sense overall. I haven't checked EDH rec for it, but I assume it is up and down all over the place. And if I were going to be picking up a version to speculate on, it would honestly be the set foil. As much as I do like the FNM promo, it has the new frame, not that great, and the commander version is worth nothing because it is not foil, right? So we just hard pass. As a star foil, as an old foil, this thing is also flat as hell. It does not curl, and the colors are super vibrant on it. So it also looks really unique and really interesting. Overall, I like it as a pick. I don't know how deep I would go on this because I'd be looking to inflect it back, most likely to a player base, and I don't know how many people would be picking that up. No,
that's fair.
That would be my only concern with this overall. If you're going to go to buy a list, then probably absolutely, just slam it out there. But for me, overall, like I said, it's definitely something I'd be interested in picking up and moving locally when the time comes, be that as it may. I don't think you're ever going to really lose on this, especially if you find people who are interested in those old foils, collecting to finish sets for whatever reason, so that you should always have an avenue to get out. For me, I'm also going to go with a big dopey green card, but for me, it is World Shaper this week.
I love this card.
Yep. So while we're talking about Ixalan, this is where we're going to hang out. Rivals of Ixalan brought us World Shaper. 3 and a green for a 3/3. Whenever World Shaper attacks, you may put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then, when World Shaper dies, put all land cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. And right now it's got a market of about $2.50, which is fantastic. So I added this on my list in February of this year, so it's been about 4 months, almost to the day. And CK was buying 26 at $1.15, and there were 266 at $2.48 on TCG Player. Now, as of taking my notes, there were 209 on TCG Player for $2.50. We see the market price is still floating right around there. It's $2.49. So all we really saw was a drop in population with market price by staying flat. We saw a drop in population by about 30%. What I do like, what brought me to this card, is the fact that CK, when I was taking my notes, was buying 51 at $2.25. They're now buying 48 at $2. So, yeah, somebody submitted some, and they're slowly walking their buy list down. That's what they do. But that means there's the opportunity to arbitrage for store credit. Previously, during the week, we could have arbitraged for cash. There was some very low-hanging fruit, and I believe there still might be. So overall, when you look at World Shaper, it's like, well, what does this card do? So commander playability, it really is just a green value play in decks that want to gain their value from graveyard synergies, from creature sacrificing synergies, and or land-based strategies. So that could be landfall triggers, that could be like turning your lands into creatures and then swinging out, whatever you want to do. This doesn't really preclude you from anything like some of the other lands-based finishers do. Now, overall, when you look at this card in the format, we can see, looking at the high synergy cards on Rec, let me bring this up real quick for you, that this plays pretty clearly exactly where I said. They get Rug Monster, well, there's your both land and sacrifice-based strategy. Splendid Reclamation, that is your land, truly land-based strategy. And Life from the Loam, also here, which is kind of an overall anything goes strategy because it dredges. So what are you going to do? Whatever, it's just going to happen from the graveyard. So these are all present, and as stated, very popular for the overall strategy that World Shaper allows you to employ. So digging a bit more, we see very clear strategies among the expected color pairings. When you look at commanders, Gruul decks, as expected, are doing the landfall thing, but they're doing it in a number of different ways, and they're utilizing a number of different finishers. It could be something as weird as using the first trigger on World Shaper to put cards into your graveyard, to Life from the Loam them back, to throw them with Borborygmos Enraged.
I know that. It's great.
There's another one that it's not Mina and Den. I can't remember the name of this. It's another Gruul card. Oh, it is Mina and Den.
Yeah.
Return the land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature gains trample in a turn, right? And so you just bounce a bunch of lands, give all your giant nerds trample. Cool. Game over. So Golgari is using this for creature sacrificing benefits. We talked about the Gitrog monster. It leans on cards with a dredge mechanic and a number of other ways to fill the graveyard. Sultai, Simic, and Temur blend a few strategies together, but they're namely looking to generate card advantage from lands entering the battlefield, either with card draw or token generation, then double dipping on the dies trigger by returning all the lands in the graveyard back and thus re-triggering everything else. So the World Shaper really does play a lot into a lot of different strategies. And a lot of these strategies also rely on a suite or, quote, fleet, unquote, of Nissa Planeswalkers, ranging from Nissa Vital Force to Nissa Ascended Animus, which is the newest one, and then an appropriate suite of Planeswalkers based on color and theme identity. So it's not just these cool synergistic spells or creatures we're seeing. We're also seeing a lot of really synergistic Planeswalkers, mainly Nissas. So all said and told, World Shaper is actually really just kind of the tip of an iceberg, and speccing on a few cards below the surface is also a great idea. So when you take a look at the Rex page, you're going to see a lot of cool stuff on here. I wanted to call out the Planeswalkers in particular because it's literally just like I said, a fleet of different Nissas. So if you were ever questioning, well, where does this Nissa go? Unless it's literally Nissa Ravine, the answer is probably somewhere with World Shaper, and then there's a dozen or so different decks you can build behind World Shaper. So bring those Nissas out to party, man. Pick them up. If World Shaper is moving, then a lot of these other cards that are tangentially related are also going to be moving. So take some time, look around, right? Timeline on this is really interesting because it just kind of took off on on CK, and if we take a look again on stocks when I zoom in, it's just really just picking up after a wild dip at Neon Dynasty. It just tanks and then picks back up. So that tank was actually a Commander reprint, and now we're finally recovering. This was like a $5 card, and we're heading back towards $3. This sells about 200 copies a month between near mint and LP, and while the recovery started between Bro and One releases, it's kind of continued to pick up steam with land-based boons. So Bro and One didn't really bring us a lot in terms of land-based strategy. It was actually Mom that brought us a ton more to this. They brought us the color pairings, Borborygmos and Flibblethip. It brought us the new Nissa I mentioned. It actually injects a lot more into this, but we've been getting like little crumbs along the way that kind of play into World Shaper that just help pick up the sales velocity. And then becomes a $3 card very quickly on TCG Player. So the timeline might be rather short if we turn this back around into the open market. If that's where we want to make our profit, we can probably do it, I think, if my math was correct, inside of like 4 to 5 weeks. Outside of that, it'll probably be another couple of months into the open market. If you just like, if there's nobody has bricks of this, you gotta like slowly pick up stock, so it could take longer to out for profit is kind of where I'm going with this. You can't just like buy infinite quantity, which is kind of sad. Reprint equity, this is not tied to a plane necessarily, but there are only other 2 Merfolk Shaman printed outside of Commander reprints, and one of them is from Tempest and the other is from Apocalypse. And it was from the Volver cycle. It's I believe it's the Teamer one in the cycle, the Teamer uncommon. So, because I looked at this and I was like, it doesn't have Explore. What is keeping this from being reprinted? And it is the Merfolk Shaman type. That's it. They don't reprint or make Merfolk Shamans. The glut of them were from Ixalan and then reprinted in Commander products. So judging based on this, I would expect that we could see this in a reprint within Commander product when we visit Ixalan again, but I wouldn't expect it in another Commander set. And even then, it's kind of tenuous when we go to Ixalan because we're going to be underground. And if there are Merfolk underground, will they be green or blue? We don't really know. Will they be Simic? Will they be Dimir? Don't know yet.
Could they be like Golgari or something?
Exactly, right? We just don't know, but that would be the next place I could see this getting a reprint because of that type is just in a Commander set, and Ixalan is the most likely place. That's it, right? That one's pretty tight. For buy quantity, I have like maybe a set from playing Standard, just from cracking from packs at FNM. And if I was looking to trade these out, I'd cap out at about 8 copies. Flipping to buy list, I'd probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of about a dozen. So for me, it's just like I said, another maybe 6 or so copies to really get this going, put it in a trade binder, make it accessible to people. If I wanted to move these to buy list, I'd pick up those 12. I'd pick up as many as I could on the cheap from as many people as I could, flip a few of them out for immediate profit and credit, and then kind of try and free roll the next 2 or 3 in trade. And then the next, I think after that would be like 4 or 6, somewhere in there. They're just gravy. That's what I'd be looking to do with this. I wouldn't go super duper deep on this because right now it just seems like this unknown quantity card. Nobody's really playing this when it comes to Commander content. There's no content producer that really seems interested in this card. This wasn't a Standard set that did impact the Standard environment, but it was not it's not an Explore card, which I'm mentioning for the second time, and thus the trigger is a little more difficult to utilize. You have to attack with this. This is not an ETB trigger. When the creature enters, it is not an ETB trigger. When the land triggers, you have to attack with this, which makes it a little dicey compared to some other options. So I would never expect this to just run out the door. So I would keep my buy quantity pretty tight. Basically, like looking to serve locally and then buy list the rest. I do believe in this at the open market. If you find sitting on it, then you can go as deep as you really want. Because like I said, 200 a month between near mint and LP, you'll be able to flip them back for profit pretty quickly. But that's if you want to go to TCG Player and direct. So
Yeah.
that one's on you.
No, I like this card a lot. It does a lot of things that I think are very abusable in EDH.
Yeah.
Obviously, anything graveyard is good.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting all of your lands back when it dies is just good.
Yeah.
Also, the synergies and how it works with like wildfire and everything else are also amazing to me. I love that stuff. I'm a sucker for it. I just like blowing up all the lands. I also think that when you talk about reprint equity, something that's important to note is because of like the race class system, Shaman is a green thing. Yes. So if Merfolk aren't green, if they are Dimir, we're not getting anything like this.
Nope.
And I think that it's also something that, to me, I wouldn't be too terribly worried about a reprint because of how sizable the last preprint was and how quickly it's corrected since. Not to mention the velocity on it, to me, still says it's kind of viable for us to do this.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world. Let's give it a shot.
Nope. Yeah. It took like 3 to 4 months to see that uptick, and it didn't take much. Between Bro and 1, there was really not a lot that we got from this kind of stuff. It was March that really pushes it. So yeah, the retrace here is going to be pretty strong.
Yeah.
So that's my pick for the week. Thank you. Anything else on the way out?
No, that about does it.
All right. So for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and YouTube, I am at Halt. I am Reptar. You are
at Thirsty Sizzler.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.